Hey folks, you're listening to the Java Easily podcast, episode number 19.
Java Easy. News, tutorials, tips. Everything you need to know as a beginner Java developer.
Hi there, welcome back to the Java Easily podcast. Thanks for returning, it's good to have you here. Now, just before we get started, if you're a complete beginner to Java and you want to get a helping hand getting set up and beginning your Java journey, then go to javaeasily.com and you can grab our Java Beginner Starter Kit over there. You'll find in this guide links to essential introductory videos to Java technology, and that should allow you to get up and running to establish a coding environment with Java as quickly as possible. Anyway, let's jump into the episode now. So in OO, there are three main pillars to object-oriented engineering, and they are polymorphism, inheritance, and encapsulation. And you can remember this by the acronym PIE, P-I-E. The easiest one to understand is encapsulation, and we dealt with that one in the last episode. And so the next one to look at is inheritance. And again, we're going to bring on some more syntax constructs there. Inheritance you do using the word extends. So there's a new keyword here now, extends, which allows us to do this thing called inheritance. So going back to the person example from last week, if we have a person class with a name and an age, we could extend that class, which would be through creating a thing called a subclass. That means a class which extends this other class, which is called a superclass. So the person class would be the superclass in this case. So yeah, we could extend that by creating, for example, an employee class. So if you imagine we've got class person with a name and an age. The age is an int, the name is a string. Both of those fields are marked as private because we've got this notion of encapsulation and information hiding. We could then extend this person class by creating an employee class. So we could then have class employee extends person in our definition, our class definition there. Now, what does this give us straight out of the gate? What this gives us is the ability, when we create an employee object out of that employee class, it gives us code reuse. It means that every time you now create an employee object, when you reference that object, like my employee dot, as soon as you put that dot there, you will then see, straight out of the gate, the haveBirthday method, assuming the person superclass has this public method, haveBirthday. And that's because subclasses inherit, which basically means get given completely for free, the methods which are defined on that superclass. Specifically, for now at least, the public methods. So they won't inherit, for example, the private methods because private is private, right? So if you have any private methods in the person class, they will only be visible in the person class. But any public methods you have in the person class, by virtue of the fact that the employee class extends this person class, they will also be visible and hence usable to callers of the employee class too. And this is this notion of code reuse. And it's code reuse because the subclass didn't need to duplicate that code, didn't need to rewrite that code. It was just automatically there, kind of given to it, so-called inherited from the superclass. Now, there are some nuances to this. For example, if name and age are private in the superclass, that is in the person class, then the employee subclass won't be able to see these properties, and that's because they're private. Now, if you wanted to give the employee class direct access to be able to see these properties and to have so-called visibility on these properties, you could use another keyword called protected. So instead of having private int age, private string name, you could say protected int age, protected string name. And what you'd find then is in the IDE, when you're coding with the employee class, you'd find that you'd actually be able to see the name and age properties from the superclass. In other words, if you're inside an instance method and you do this dot, you would see name and age pop up there to enable you to write to them directly. Now, you may or may not want that to happen. And the subject of encapsulation and what you share, and or more specifically how encapsulated something is, depends on how you're actually evolving your OO design. But here we're just talking about the syntax constructs that Java gives you to be able to facilitate OO software engineering without going into really the nuances of when you'd use that or how you'd use that. That's kind of more advanced. So it kind of looks good now, doesn't it? We have the ability to create classes which represent real-world concepts and encapsulate the state of those classes and only expose the behavior which we want to make publicly accessible. And we do that with just three keywords: class, private, and public. Then we jump up to the next level where we can implement inheritance. We then get into the notion of superclasses and subclasses, and we can get this code reuse thing, and we can do this by using the extends keyword. And now we have this notion of superclasses and subclasses, with subclasses inheriting, that means getting for free, some of the code which is in the superclass. That's awesome. The next thing to look at then will be this notion of polymorphism, but we're going to save that for now and look at that next week. I want to keep the episodes in this mini-series nice and short, nice and bite-sized, so you don't get too overwhelmed with all of these concepts, and then you can just let them sink in one by one with each episode. Anyway, that's it from me, so until next time, happy coding, and speak soon. Bye.